She wouldn't. There was something about those two men in their thick cloaks, the color of arterial blood, that was terrifying. No, he whispered. He was as white as if he'd seen a ghost. Shadow hunters in warlock robes. Consider this a friendly follow-up, Greymark, said the man with a gray mustache. There's nothing friendly about you, Pangborn. Luke sat down on the edge of his desk, angling his body so it blocked the man's view of his duffel bag and its contents. Now that he was closer, Clary could see that his face and hands were badly bruised, his fingers scraped and bloody. A long cut along his neck disappeared down into his collar. What on earth happened to him? Blackwell, don't touch that. It's valuable, Luke said, sternly. The big red-headed man who had picked up the statue of Kali from the top of the bookshelf ran his beefy fingers over it consideringly. Nice, he said. Said Pangborn, taking the statue from his companion. She who was created to battle a demon who could not be killed by any god or man. Oh, Kali, my mother full of bliss, enchantress of the almighty Shiva. In thy delirious joy thou dancest, clapping thy hands together. Thou art the mover of all that moves, and we are but the helpless toys. Very nice, said Luke. I didn't know you were a student of the Indian myths. All the stories are true, said Pangborn, and Clary felt a small shiver go up her spine. Or have you forgotten even that? I forget nothing, said Luke. Though he looked relaxed, Clary could see tension in the lines of his shoulders and mouth. I suppose Valentine sent you. He did, said Pangborn. He thought you might have changed your mind. There's nothing to change my mind about. I already told you I don't know anything. Nice cloaks, by the way. Thanks, said Blackwell with a sly grin. Skinned them off a couple of dead warlocks. Those are official accord robes, aren't they? Luke asked. Are they from the uprising? Pangborn chuckled softly. Spoils of battle. Aren't you afraid someone might mistake you for the real thing? Not, said Blackwell. Once they got up close. Pangborn fondled the edge of his robe. Do you remember the uprising, Lucian? He said softly. That was a great and terrible day. Do you remember how we trained together for the battle? Luke's face twisted. The past is the past. I don't know what to tell you, gentlemen. I can't help you now. I know nothing. Anything is such a general word, so unspecific, said Pangborn, sounding melancholy. Surely someone who owns so many books must know something. If you want to know where to find a jog-toad swallow in springtime, I could direct you to the correct reference title. But if you want to know where the mortal cup has disappeared to, disappeared might not be quite the correct word. Purred Pangborn. Hidden more like hidden by Jocelyn. That may be, said Luke. So, hasn't she told you where it is yet? She has not yet regained consciousness, said Pangborn, carving the air with a long-fingered hand. Valentine is disappointed. He was looking forward to their reunion. I'm sure she didn't reciprocate the sentiment, muttered Luke. Pangborn cackled. Jealous, Greymark? Perhaps you no longer feel about her the way you used to. A trembling had started in Clary's fingers, so pronounced that she knitted her hands together tightly to try to stop them from shaking. Jocelyn? Can they be talking about my mother? I never felt any way about her, particularly, said Luke. Two shadow hunters, exiled from their own kind. You can see why we might have bonded together, but I'm not going to try to interfere with Valentine's plans for her, if that's what he's worried about. I wouldn't say he was worried, said Pangborn, more curious. We all wondered if you were still alive, still recognizably human. Luke arched his eyebrows. And you seem well enough, said Pangborn, grudgingly. He set the Kali statue down on the shelf. There was a child, wasn't there? A girl? Luke looked taken aback. What? Don't play dumb, said Blackwell in his snarl of a voice. We know the bitch had a daughter. They found photos of her in the apartment. A bedroom. I thought you were asking about children of mine, Luke interrupted smoothly. Yes, Jocelyn had a daughter, Clarissa. I assume she's run off. Did Valentine send you to find her? Not us, said Pangborn, but he is looking. We could search this place, added Blackwell. I wouldn't advise it, said Luke, and slid off the desk. He was a certain cold menace to his look as he stared down at the two men, though his expression hadn't changed. What makes you think she's still alive? I thought Valentine sent raveners to scour the place. Enough raveners poison, and most people will crumble away to ashes, leave no trace behind. The ravener was killed, said Pangborn. It made Valentine suspicious. Everything makes Valentine suspicious, said Luke. Maybe Jocelyn killed it. She was certainly capable. Blackwell grunted. Maybe. Luke shrugged. Look, I've got no idea where the girl is, but for what it's worth, I'd guess she's dead. She'd have turned up by now otherwise. Anyway, she's not much of a danger. She's 15 years old, she's never heard of Valentine, and she doesn't believe in demons. Pangborn chuckled. A fortunate child. Not anymore, said Luke. Blackwell raised his eyebrows. You sound angry, Lucian. I'm not angry. I'm exasperated. I'm not planning on interfering with Valentine's plans. Do you understand that? I'm not a fool. Really, said Blackwell. It's nice to see that you've developed a healthy respect for your own skin over the years. Lucian, you weren't always so pragmatic. You do know, said Pangborn, his tone conversational, that we'd trade her, Jocelyn, for the cup. Safely delivered right to your door. That's a promise from Valentine himself. I know, said Luke. I'm not interested. I don't know where your precious cup is, and I don't want to get involved in your politics. I hate Valentine, he added, but I respect him. I know he'll mow down everyone in his path. I intend to be out of his way when it happens. He's a monster, a killing machine. Look who's talking, snarled Blackwell. I take it these are your preparations for removing yourself from Valentine's path, said Pangborn, pointing a long finger at the half-concealed duffel bag on the desk. Getting out of town, Lucian? Luke nodded slowly. Going to the country. I plan to lay low for a while. We could stop you, said Blackwell. Make you stay. Luke smiled. It transformed his face. Suddenly he was no longer the kind, scholarly man who'd pushed Clary on the swings at the park and taught her how to ride a tricycle. Suddenly, there was something feral behind his eyes, something vicious and cold. You could try. Pangborn glanced at Blackwell, who shook his head once, slowly. Pangborn turned back to Luke. You will notify us if you experience any sudden memory resurgence. Luke was still smiling. You will be first on my list to call. Pangborn nodded shortly. I suppose we'll take our leave. The angel guard you, Lucian. The angel does not guard those like me, said Luke. He picked the duffel bag up off the desk and nodded the top. On your way, gentlemen. Lifting their hoods to cover their faces again, the two men left the room, followed a moment later by Luke. He paused a moment at the door, glancing around as if he wondered if he'd forgotten something. Then he shut it carefully behind him. Clary stayed where she was, frozen, hearing the front door swing shut and the distant jingle of chain and keys as Luke refastened the padlock. She kept seeing the look on Luke's face over and over, and he said he wasn't interested in what happened to her mother. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Clary. It was Simon, his voice hesitant, almost gentle. Are you okay? She shook her head, mutilely. She felt far from okay. In fact, she felt like she'd never be okay again. Of course she isn't. It was Jace, his voice sharp and cold as ice shards. He took hold of the screen and moved it aside sharply. At least now we know who would send a demon after your mother. Those men think she has the mortal cup. Clary felt her lips thin into a straight line. That's totally ridiculous and impossible. Maybe, said Jace, leaning against Luke's desk. He fixed her with eyes as opaque as smoked glass. Have you ever seen those men before? No, she shook her head. Never. Lucian seemed to know them, to be friendly with them. I wouldn't say friendly, said Simon. I'd say they were suppressing their hostility. They didn't kill him outright, said Jace. They think he knows more than he's telling. Maybe, said Clary, or maybe they're just reluctant to kill another shadow hunter. Jace laughed, a harsh, almost vicious noise that raised the hairs on Clary's arms. I doubt that. She looked at him hard. What makes you so sure? Do you know them? The laughter had gone from his voice entirely when he replied. Do I know them? He echoed. You might say that. Those are the men who murdered my father. Dun 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 dun.